Ole Helmesen, you are from the Copenhagen Business School. You've done a lot of research into British politics. How do you view the coming election as a great change?
Yes, I do. I think that no matter how the election outcome will be on Thursday or Friday morning, I think that the British political system is in for a change. Either they get a Conservative government for the first time in 13 years, and apparently or seemingly a different kind of Conservative government than the last one, or they'll get some kind of coalition between the Lib Dems and the Labour Party. I don't believe that they're going to get a coalition government because that's so unusual to the British, but some kind of coalition deal with between those two parties.
Like in the 1970s, perhaps?
For example, yes. So that's, I think, the most likely, not the most likely outcome, but I think it's time for change, apparently, and it looks as though the voters are in for that kind of change, or they want that kind of change.
Why do you think that is so? Is it because of metal fatigue in the Labour Party, or what?
I think it's a combination. I think it's part of metal fatigue in the Labour Party and the way they've handled their 13 years in power. They started out quite well, but they have sort of not been doing too well lately. And that applies both to the last few years of Blair, but also the transition to Brown and the way he has handled it. I think it's also because of voters are discontented generally with their politicians. The expenses scandal, which broke last May, and other things, but above all, the expenses scandal, I think, has made lots of people so fed up with their politicians that they are ready for almost any kind of change.
The Liberal Party, way back in the 50s and 60s, had a fairly good place with Jeremy Thorpe as a leader, and they developed their Orpington Man concept, and sort of they disappeared almost.
Yes, they did.
What happened?
I don't know. I actually don't know. I think they were squeezed between the two big parties, and they were squeezed in that tradition of having two major parties. I mean, they came from their own background as one of the major parties up until sort of around 1920, and then they just gradually got squeezed. And then they had sort of the kind of renaissance actually also in the early 80s, when they formed the alliance with the breakaway Social Democrats from the Labour Party, where they actually got quite a good election, I think, in 1984 with about 25% of the vote, and then they merged with the two parties merged in '88, I think it was. So. I mean, it has always been a party of a certain size. It's not a small party by European standards. A party which gets about 20–22% in an election. It's not a small party, but it is, of course, in the British system with the election system that they have there.
The Lib Dems, they want both a written constitution and proportional representation. What chances do they have of getting those?
I think it's going to be difficult, or at least I think it's going to take a long time. I mean, Britain has done without a written constitution for, I don't know, 1,000 years or more, or something like that, and they have done without proportional representation for many, many years. I think one thing that is sometimes forgotten in this debate is that the system they have now very often does result in good, stable government. But I think that there is sort of a shift among voters. They seem to be more willing to accept plurality. The sort of the old-fashioned class attachment with the Labour Party or with the Conservative Party, of course, it's still there for many people, but there are also quite a number of people who don't see politics in that way. Politics have changed from those sort of clear class-based parties to a more plural version and wishes from the electorate.
Does that reflect a change in society away from a sort of working class labour economy to a more white collar and service economy?
Probably. I think it's probably part of it. I mean, it's no secret. Everyone knows that Labour has lost a lot of its sort of old core constituents in the working class. The deindustrialization of parts of Britain and the change from blue-collar workers to white-collar workers has sort of created this much bigger middle class. The Labour Party tried, I think, to adapt to that with New Labour, Tony Blair's New Labour, and and I think did a fairly good job at the beginning, but the way they handled the economy has turned out to be, well, just not good enough, and that has apparently made lots of Labour voters or Labour aficionados discontented because they are, I mean, they have to pay for the problems now and the future.
The economy has been one of the major themes. What other themes have you seen as important?
I think the immigration issue is quite important. It doesn't feature that much in the election campaign, but I think it's quite important in the British political debate, and I think there is a likelihood that it will become more important. There is quite a lot of dissatisfaction with the immigration policy. It doesn't really come out in the official political channels, that is in Parliament, because of the election system, but for example, the British National Party, which resembles the Danish People's Party in this country, does voice that disgruntlement with immigration quite a lot, and often in very harsh terms. And they do get, in opinion polls and in many constituencies, they do get a fair share of the vote. And I think it's sort of it's lying under the surface, this kind of disgruntlement, and politician. I think the members of the major parties would be well advised to really take that discussion up front and not sort of try to put a lid on it by saying that Britain is multicultural. It is, of course, but I think it's necessary to discuss and debate much more what does that actually mean. And I'm sort of looking forward to seeing how the parties are going to tackle that in the coming years.
Denmark joined the common market at the same time as Britain, and they both have a rather lukewarm attitude to the
That's
EU.
Right. Yes.
How do you think the British people will be weighing their votes on the EU question on Thursday?
I don't think it's going to play a role for very many voters when they stand in the ballot box or have to decide, because the European question is, I think, it's pretty absent from most Britain's minds. Lots of polls show that the British are probably the people in Europe with the least knowledge and the least interest in the European Union. So I don't think it matters a lot to most of the voters, in fact. I don't think many people are scared off by Clegg saying that he wants the euro and that he's the Europhile and so on. So I don't think it matters a lot.
All Helmets and thanks indeed. This is Michael de Laine for the Copenhagen Voice.